Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into a massive historical and linguistic misunderstanding, one that totally surrounds the famous 99 names of God and the deepest roots of Islamic mysticism. We're going to look at the raw historical data, analyze the actual linguistic roots, and fundamentally reframe how these concepts have been taught for centuries. This is all about looking at the source material with completely fresh eyes, and honestly, some of what we found is pretty mind-blowing.
For generations, so many believers have reduced the profound Esma-ul Husna, the beautiful names of God, to basically just rote memorization. It's literally like rattling off a multiplication table to pass a middle school math test. People have been told for years that simply memorizing a list of 99 words is this sort of transactional ticket to just buy their way into heaven. But think about it. When you treat faith as a passive memory test, you completely strip these divine names of their actual transformative power.
And that brings us to a really crucial linguistic pivot. The famous tradition promises paradise to those who perform Iksha of the 99 names. Now, for centuries, Iksha has been pretty loosely translated as to count or to memorize. But when you actually dig into the ancient Arabic root of this word, hasa or hasat, you uncover this massive core misunderstanding. The root doesn't mean counting numbers at all. It actually means to plant a seed, to cultivate, to deeply comprehend, and to build a logical link between reasons and goals. So this ancient text wasn't asking for some cheap memory trick, it was demanding a full-on cognitive and spiritual transformation.
So, what does this transformation actually look like in practice? Well, it requires shifting our entire mindset. The myth we've been fed is that faith is just a passive memory exercise, but the reality is all about comprehension and application. When you practice the true meaning of ihsan, you are literally planting these names in your heart like a seed, giving them room to grow into your daily actions. It means shifting from treating God as this passive object stored on your brain's hard drive to an active subject, an active agent that actually guides your everyday life. Like, if God is the seeing, you view the world differently. If God is the loving, you act with love. It's a living, breathing experience.
Section 1. The flaws in the famous lists.
So most people just assume there's one universally agreed upon list of 99 names, right? Well, the historical texts tell a completely different story. When we actually compare the two most trusted and widely circulated hadith lists side by side, they massively contradict each other. Tirmidhi's list contains 25 names that are completely absent from Ibn Majah's list. And on the flip side, Ibn Majah includes 26 names you won't find anywhere in Tirmidhi's text. If you take a step back and actually combine the unique names from both of these definitive lists, you don't get 99 names. You get a list of 125 names. This glaring mathematical inconsistency points straight to a human element in how these lists were compiled.
But hold on, because here is the most shocking data point of all: 970. This single number completely shatters how we view these traditional lists.
What exactly does 970 represent? Well, the profound aha moment in our source material is the realization that the name Rabb, meaning Lord or Sustainer, appears exactly 970 times in the Quran. Aside from the name Allah, it is literally the single most common name God uses to refer to himself in the entire text. Yet, unbelievably, the name Rabb is entirely missing from both of those famous 99 names lists we just looked at. No way, right? The compilers of these historical lists somehow completely forgot to include the very name used almost 1,000 times in the Revelation itself.
This glaring omission forces us to step back and ask a really strict methodological question. Do humans actually have the authority to invent names for God, based on his actions, just using human logic? I mean, if the compilers missed the most obvious names explicitly stated in the text, where in the world did they get the other names on their lists? To answer that, we really have to look under the hood at the grammar of theology. The compilers of these historical lists often took actions, verbs, described in the Quran and humanly converted them into nouns to create brand new names. For instance, the text says God punishes severely in response to a specific wrongdoing. Human logic then took that and turned it into the noun the Punisher. The text says God plans or counters tricks. Human logic turned that into a permanent title. But the source strongly argues we absolutely cannot just turn Quranic verbs into nouns. Why? Because God's actions are conditional responses to human behavior. They aren't his permanent inherent traits. A verb is an action that starts and stops. A name is an eternal characteristic.
Think about it like this. You wouldn't even name your own child without asking your spouse first, right? That would cause an immediate family crisis. So how can human beings boldly invent names for the Creator without his direct instruction? The strict conclusion drawn here is what we call a revelation-first methodology. Revelation, the text itself, is the absolute only valid source for naming God. We cannot use flawed human logic to apply titles to him that he didn't explicitly grant himself.
Section 2. Applying revelation first to mysticism or tasawwuf.
The source outlines a really striking four-stage historical breakdown of how mysticism evolved and ultimately deteriorated over the centuries. It kicks off with stage 1, irfan, which represents pure wisdom and deep spiritual understanding. Then, as time passes, it institutionalizes into stage 2, tasawwuf. This further fractures into stage 3, tariqat, characterized by sectarian divisions and competing groups. Finally, the source argues that in the modern era, much of this has tragically devolved into stage 4, charlatanlik, which literally translates to charlatanism and exploitation. The contrast between that very first stage and the last is incredibly telling.
Just look at the stark difference here. In the original era of pure wisdom, irfan, practiced by scholars like Haris el-Muhasibi, the mind was fiercely active. The intellect was guided entirely by revelation. The motto was basically, the mind is the Quran and the Quran is the mind. But compare that to the modern deterioration into charlatanism, where the mind is completely shut down. It's characterized by this blind obedience to human figures. The source gives a great, kind of absurd example of this mentality. If a follower is asked, why do you perform this ritual 7 times? The answer isn't based on scripture at all. The answer is simply, because the sheikh says so. It becomes form completely stripped of substance, incorporating foreign practices that totally abandon the intellect. Ultimately, whether we're trying to properly understand the names of God without human distortion, or we're seeking a genuine spiritual path totally free from charlatanism, the absolute conclusion remains exactly the same. Murshid-e-Hakiki Quran'dir. The true, perfect guide is always the Quran. Anything that tries to bypass the text and relies purely on human logic or blind human obedience, well, that's practically guaranteed to lead you astray.
So, the crucial question I want to leave you with today is this. Are you simply memorizing the multiplication table of your faith? Are you treating your beliefs as just some passive, transactional memory test? Or are you ready to practice true ihsa, to plant the seed of understanding, deeply comprehend the text, and let that revelation actively transform how you live every single day? It's a massive, fundamental shift from passive repetition to active, living wisdom. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those hard questions, keep looking closely at the source, and I'll catch you in the next one.